Hello everyone and welcome to this new series I'm planning on the MCU detailing the biggest lost potential in the franchise, explaining all the things I find to be unwanting of a certain character, topic, storyline, or anything really, and then finishing with my own personal changes to these subjects, whether minor or major. And this is not to say these aspects of wasted potential are absolutely movie breaking or downright terrible plot holes. No, they are just things that I believe could have had the capability of being better than they were, or even amazing. So, what bigger and better way to start off this series than going into the wasted potential of Thanos in Avengers Endgame? While I still believe Thanos to be the MCU's best villain and also just an all-around fantastic movie villain, his portrayal in Endgame was very slightly, just soured my image of him. And I suppose this is mainly due to how the writers handled his involvement in the story, as opposed to his characterization. But to be fair, there are some mildly murky areas on that part of him too. Let's begin with his first scene where it's revealed that he destroyed the Infinity Stones and then is instantly killed off by Thor. Now, the concept of the stones being able to be destroyed by each other seems questionable at best, and the fact that Thanos would do this and not keep them doesn't quite sit right with me either. Even though he did complete his mission and killed half of all life in the universe, it would make sense that he doesn't feel the need to keep on fighting. But he must know that the Avengers still exist, or at the very least, some Avengers still exist after the snap, and would want to go after him and the stones. But, lucky for Thanos, the writers of this film just had him destroy the stones by using the stones to destroy the stones. But beyond all that, Thanos just doesn't really have the same presence as he did in Infinity War. I mean, don't get me wrong, he is still very intimidating and has some cool lines of dialogue, but there is no looming tension from him being in the film. He's just kind of there to begin with. He's there because he has to be there, but to start with, he just kind of shows up. And it's not until he discovers the second nebula from the future that he becomes more involved in the story, but only mildly. He just spends the rest of the time watching future nebula's memories to find out what's happening, and he discovers that the Avengers from the future are planning to undo something he did in their time. Now, there is a nice line of dialogue where he actually recognizes they are Avengers, and calls them unruly wretches, so that familiarity made me invested for their fight later on. But then it's just never brought up again or developed, because he still doesn't know any of them personally like he did in Infinity War. I just think it would have made the conflict so much more meaningful and personal if the Thanos they fought in the end of this film was the same Thanos they fought from the very start in the previous film. Thanos just has no personal stakes in the conflict, unlike the Avengers, and I guess the audience too, because we know who Thanos is. We've seen him before, we're accustomed to him. The Avengers know who Thanos is, but Thanos doesn't know any of them. He just wants to kill these people, destroy their planet, and get the Infinity Stones, and move on with his life. Now, I do understand that the entire plot and story/character development revolves around the Avengers this time around. This is about their journey and their mission to save the universe. Thanos had an entire film's worth of development in Infinity War. That film, that was essentially his film. That was about his journey and his mission to, in his mind, save the universe. And, he had the most screen time out of any other character in that movie, and it was fantastic. And I'm not suggesting that he get as much screen time, or even more screen time in this film, in Endgame, than he did before. Although, let's be honest, it's a 3-hour film. There is easily more room to fit in the main antagonist, don't you think? But regardless, that is also a worthy issue to bring up. Yes, this film doesn't center around Thanos as much, which is fine. He had his moment in Infinity War. But when you have a film that is 3 hours long, and the main villain of not just these last two movies, but the main villain of the entire 10-year spanning Marvel Cinematic Universe franchise, The villain that will cap off the ending of the first decade of movies, whose total amount of screen time in his final ever appearance, for now, amounts to 12 minutes? I don't believe it is entirely unreasonable to ask for a little bit more from this character, especially because in Infinity War, he is so well written and so powerful, intimidating, like with a terrifying presence that once he enters a scene, you just fall silent and think to yourself, oh fuck, it's the big purple big chin daddy. Shit is going down. Now, to add my personal changes to Thanos in Endgame, number one, as just stated, quite a bit more screen time. Not a ton, again, not like more than what he got in Infinity War, but just enough so that he has a much larger presence in the film and not just kind of thrown into the plot because future Nebula's brain memory augment suddenly decided to act up and malfunction the exact moment she was about to leave the timeline, and Thanos just happened to be there to see this with 2014 Nebula. But yeah, the speech Thanos gives before he fights Cap, Tony, and Thor is perfectly fit for his character. And with the Thanos I've reimagined here, it wouldn't change that moment or really any of his dialogue. Yeah, it's a great scene. Number two, Thanos uses the Reality Stone to trick the Avengers who attack him at the start of the film into thinking the stones are gone and attacks them, then makes his escape. The Avengers, now concerned that Thanos will be more dangerous now that he knows the Avengers are after him, they go through a similar journey like in the original film, whereas instead of accepting defeat and moving on with their lives for the next 5 years, they instead spend that time preparing as much as they can to fight back against Thanos, while also trying to find his location at the same time, because Thanos still has one of the stones that can help him teleport, the Space Stone. So he's always jumping around all over the place. Scott Lang returns, Ant-Man, and again, same story beats happens. He tells them about the quantum tunnel. They then time travel back to the point where all 6 Infinity Stones are together on Wakanda in Infinity War, when Thanos has them. They then take the gauntlet with the stones. They decide to use the stones to fight back against the present Thanos and bring back all the dusted away people. Now the climax, the big fight, goes almost exactly the same, with the portals opening, and this time Thanos brings back his army to fight with him again, as they are still around after Infinity War, because at the end of Infinity War you just kind of left, so his armies are still around. But instead of the original tension of that scene being the Avengers trying desperately to get the stones back into the time machine, this time it's more of a race to see who will snatch the stones, or the gauntlet, with the stones in them, from the opposite team first. So as both armies are fighting out, Thanos and the other Avengers are fighting back and forth using the Infinity Stones. And once one character loses their stones / gauntlet, they have lost the fight, essentially, because the other character, who has the stones, can just snap them away with little to no resistance. So yes, there you have it. You have Thanos being the imposing badass villain he is, to a much grander scale this time. And you still top it off with the same I am Iron Man snapping moment with the final battle, still sharing similar beats from the original with what I think is a cool little spin on the fight, with both sides of the conflict using Infinity Stones in a sort of stalemate confrontation until one side has their stones taken out of the equation, which I feel adds a little bit more urgency to the fight, and just that much more development for Thanos as a force to be reckoned with. Well, thank you very much indeed for watching. This series was sort of a spur-of-the-moment idea I had. Many ideas on different kinds of videos I wanted to do on the MCU specifically, one of which involved me doing a retrospective on every single film in the entire Marvel catalogue, but then after more thought, I was just like, fuck that. So I settled on this idea, which works more for me as a side gig in between planning much longer and in-depth movie reviews. But please do tell me what you think about this idea, this video as a whole, whether you agree or disagree with my assessment, and why. It would be very much appreciated. So, thanks again, and goodbye.